Okay, we are live on YouTube as well.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 15th, 2020 public hearing, public meeting of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. I will call the roll. Chair Carroll.
Here.
Commissioner Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen.
Yeah.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson.
Hey,
Commissioner Lepke.
stop.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Here.
Okay, I see Commissioner Chapin. Are you here?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Rich.
Okay. And Commissioner Jefferson, are you here?
Yes, I was muted. Yes,
Okay,
I was
thank
muted.
you. Okay, all set.
Good morning and welcome to the December 15th public hearing, public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Today we are going to start the day with a public meeting item and then we will move into our hearing agenda. If you would like to watch the proceedings, you may do so on our YouTube channel. Go to the LPC page on YouTube where we're live streaming today's meeting. If you would like to testify on any of the hearing items, please join the meeting at the estimated time for that item identified on our public hearing agenda, which can be found on our website. And that will give you the Zoom information. In addition, right before each public hearing item, we will have before the testimony for each public hearing item, we will have a slide with the meeting information so you can call in or enter the Zoom meeting. And so with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, the Director of Preservation, to lead us through today's agenda.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, Commissioners. As mentioned, we're going to start with public meeting items. I'm going to do two items, read them both in together, two separate applications. However, it is one project. So I'll go ahead and do that now. These are items 1 and 2, LPC 21-02093 and LPC 21-01518. Both applications for certificate of appropriateness, the Bronx, block 3190, lot 1, 2500 Geronimo Avenue, the St. James Episcopal Church and Parish individual landmark. This is a Gothic revival style church and parish house designed by Henry Dudley and constructed in 1863. The first application is to replace windows and doors, and the second application is to demolish the existing 1960s Fellowship Hall and construct a new building on the landmark site. Please note that at the original public hearing of October 6, 2020, the commissioners indicated a consensus of support for the demolition of the existing 1960 Fellowship Hall addition and the construction of a new building on the northwestern side of the site. The commissioners asked the applicants to further consider the design and massing of the building, in particular, the smaller wing close to the parish house. And then on October 27th, 2020, the applicants presented for a second time. They had explored eliminating the wing and relocating the massing, but concluded it would not work for their desired program and had zoning and construction issues. Instead, the applicants focused on increasing the height of the arcade at the base of the wing to open views toward the towards the parish house, but raise the wing by a floor in doing so. While a few commissioners still had concerns about this approach, more commissioners were supportive of it, with some asking for the shorter wing to be returned and for additional design refinements to be considered. The applicant team is here to present these revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and for anyone who hasn't unmuted, just look for my request so we can vote on that. All right, great. And all in favor of opening the proceedings? Say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are open and the applicants may begin.
Applicants have joined the hearing meeting. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ward Dennis with Higgins Clays Barth and Partners, representing St. James Church and Concern for Independent Living, the applicants for this project. As Corey outlined, I think, well, the prior public meetings. Just as a reminder, this is a project that proposes a new apartment building at the north end of the church site. The apartment building will be 50% affordable and 50% supportive housing, and the new construction will include new facilities for the church, which in effect create a campus or a close at the north end of the church, which is entered through this arcade that we see at the base of the building here. At the last public hearing, the commissioners did ask us to reduce the height of the south wing from 8 stories to 7 stories, which is what you see here, and reconsider the design and detailing of the arches for the arcade to make them more true Gothic arches. We have done both of those, and we have made some additional revisions and refinements that carry out from that, and I will take you through those. So this is the south elevation comparison, before on the top and after on the bottom. A reminder that this is sort of the main entrance side of the church. This is a side from which the public usually approaches the church to enter the church itself. There we go. Looking at the west elevation, again, you can see the reduction in height of this southern wing from 8 stories before to 7 stories now. We have lost about 2 units, I think, of housing here in doing this. And as a reminder, we originally increased that height in order to allow us to increase the height of the arch. The arcade itself now is taller and slightly narrower, and again, in the true Gothic form, relating very directly to the arched forms of the church. You will see in a few moments that we have also revised the brick patterning at the base of the building to create a more rusticated brick pattern at the base of the building that ties the whole lower section of the building together. We have also brought this brick patterning around to the north elevation. Another area of concern at the last public meeting was the design and fenestration of this north elevation. As a reminder, this is a lot line condition, so we're limited in terms of the number and percentage of window openings that we can have. The feeling, I think, at the last public meeting was that the design was too regular and too rigid. So we have now modified that to create a more syncopated rhythm of openings and bringing around this rusticated brick in larger panels that creates a better design for this north elevation. This is a rendered view of the north elevation as you are north of the property on Jerome Avenue. You have the elevated train to the right and the park to the left. If you note on the thumbnail photo below, there is this park building that largely blocks the visibility of the base of the building from the park itself. But when you're up on Jerome Avenue, you can see the side and base of the building, and this is the proposed revision for that side. Going to the church itself, or to the new building itself, to the south wing, as I mentioned, we have revised the Gothic arches. It is now a true Gothic arch, modeled after the arches that we find on the church. We have also modified the proportions of the openings so that they fit within the parameters of the Gothic style. This results in a slightly taller 19-foot opening and a slightly narrower 10'4" wide opening on this west elevation, this being sort of the main entrance into that north campus or close of the church, where all of the church's social programs will be located. We've adjusted slightly the design of the gate. This is still based on the historic gate that exists at the south entrance to the church. And we have, as I mentioned, modified the brick detailing at the base of the building. We're using these projecting header courses with the gray colored brick, which creates a more rusticated pattern. And as I think you'll see when we get into the arcade itself, this creates a very nice relationship between the brick on the new building and the field stone in the historic buildings. We also have this three-course high soldier course of brick, which creates a water table around the base of the building. It hits the arches right at the spring of the arches. And if you note here on the overall elevation on Jerome Avenue, it ties in nicely with the height of the canopy at the main entrance, sort of create the soldier course and the rusticated brick create a unifying motif around the base of the building. And that unifying motif continues into the interior of the arcade as well. This is the south elevation, looking at the arcade as it passes through, and you can see that we've carried this brick detailing around into the arcade itself. And here too, we have the arches in a correct and geometrically appropriate Gothic form. As I mentioned, we went back to look at the church itself, particularly the church, and particularly this west entry on the nave, in developing the proportions of the arches. So the proposed arches are now geometrically, academically proper as Gothic arches, and particularly relate to the arch form on the church. As you can see, there are a number of sizes of openings on the church, both in terms of height and width, but they all follow the same proportions on the church. And that is what we have modeled on here. Just as a reminder, this is the historic view of the church itself, and then the parish house is this wing that sits to the north of the church. The church was constructed 1865 and the parish house in 1891. And then this is our detailing for the proportions of the arches themselves, again, basing the proportions on the height and width of the openings to get to the proper opening size and arch form. It's interesting that this is a motif that has been used elsewhere historically in Episcopal churches as they have expanded. We talked at the public hearing and at the public meeting about how St. James Church was involved in the development of apartment buildings elsewhere on its property starting in the 1920s, where they were the developer for an apartment building on Morris Avenue directly behind the church. That building included not only housing, market rate housing, but it also included housing for church members and was even tied into the church as part of its building systems. This is something that we actually see in many churches in New York City. This is the example of Calvary Episcopal Church on Park Avenue South in Manhattan. The Calvary apartment house that you see from 1928 in the center photo was developed by the church. And you can see that they too included these motifs both at the base of the building and in an arcade at the top of the building. And this idea that the city has grown up around these older churches is something that we see throughout the history of the churches. And we also see that the churches themselves are often involved in the growth of the city around them. And of course, the commission itself has embraced this idea with many of their prior approvals for new buildings next to churches throughout the city. And these are just a few examples that we had shown previously. So in terms of appropriateness for the new building based on the history of the church's development and the history of the city growing up around this church and around churches in general, we do believe that this project is appropriate on the architectural merits. I'm going to take you through a series of renderings walking around the church. These are the same renderings that we viewed before. We do have a before-after comparison in the appendix, but we thought it would be useful to take you through the whole sequence without breaking up before-after. So from the south over the sort of main entry side of the church, because the church is sited higher up on a hill and is a relatively tall structure in its own right, the apartment building sits, I think, very comfortably behind the church. It does not overwhelm the church from these views. You can see that the reduction in height to 7 stories for the south wing puts the south wing, from this view at least, slightly below the height of the church. Coming around to Jerome Avenue, you can see that the reduction in height of the south wing is actually only a few feet taller than the peak of the church itself. Because of the arrangement of the buildings on the site, we do get this separation between the church on the right and the new building on the left. And it's here, as you're coming up Jerome Avenue, that you start to see the connections between this arcade and the architecture of the church. And the Gothic arches certainly tie this together and mark this as the entry to the church programs, to the church social programs at the north end of the building. And then coming closer in on Jerome Avenue to the entrance, you get a sense of the scale of these openings. The people shown are normal people size. The openings themselves are 19 feet tall. So these are, it's really quite a monumental entry into the church complex. And you can see the church on the right, you see the parish house through the trees beyond, and you sort of have this episodic approach to the church and the parish house, where as you come through the arcade and enter into the courtyard beyond, the church is revealing itself on the right through the arcade. You can see straight ahead that we're coming in on access to the main window of the parish house beyond. You can get a sense for the rustication of the brick with the projecting headers on the left here, and how that relates to the fieldstone, the Fordham Nice of the parish house, in this case directly ahead, or the church off to the right. And then as you come out into the courtyard, you really get this, what I think is a magical moment, where the church and the parish house reveal themselves, and you experience the overall complex of the site. And you really start to see that this courtyard becomes another room of the church itself. And this is a view looking north. Straight ahead at the ground floor is the new fellowship hall of the church. To the right, that single-story building is the new community center of the church. So this is where the church's social programs and other programs will be taking place. And then looking back from north to south, back towards the church and the parish house on the left, you still get a sense of how this becomes another room for the community, for the church, outside the community center and the fellowship hall. Note on the center left here, the stair that separates the parish house and the community center. And just as a reminder, this corner of the parish house here is currently covered over and largely demolished as part of the construction of the 1950s fellowship hall. That will be part of the restoration of the parish house that is part of this overall program. So just finally, Corey did mention the second application, which has to do with modifications to the doors and windows at this porch area of the parish house. This is part of the overall program of restoration and rehabilitation to the church and parish house, which is being done as part of this project. The church is undertaking a major renovation inside the parish house that will bring in new life safety systems, sprinklering, and the like to the parish house, and also create insert a new elevator within the parish house that helps to make the entire complex, including the church, ADA accessible. So there will be restoration, repair to the church, restoration and rehabilitation of the landscaping, and then importantly, and part of the certificate of appropriateness application, we propose to modify these doors to the parish house entrance and modify these windows. This stained glass at the base of the window is not historic, although the transom up here is historic stained glass. And the proposal, as presented previously, is to replace the doors at the parish house with new doors that will have a glazed upper panel, solid lower panels. All of the hardware, existing hardware on the doors will be reused. Some of the hardware is missing, and that will be replicated to match the historic as part of this project, which is really about opening up the parish house to the community. And then finally, on the stained glass windows, we propose to remove the non-historic decorative stained glass and replace it with this Lajans leaded glass that matches what's in the transom and matches what's in the other window openings on the parish house. So that takes us through the full project. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer. We also have representatives from the architect and from the development team who can also answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? If you have any questions for the applicant team, just raise your virtual hand. Right, not seeing any questions. Rich, did we received any new written comments on the revised proposal?
We have not.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if there are no questions, I think we'll go ahead and move to our discussion. So I am starting to unmute each of you. For those of you who need to accept that request, just look at your monitors to see if you get that message. Great. Okay, and we'll begin our discussion on this. And I really want to thank everyone involved in this process. This is our third meeting on this item, and we had a very good public hearing. We had great participation. Our commissioners, as always, had very thoughtful comments, and the applicants came back with a revised proposal, and we spent more time on it. And so I just want to thank everybody for their participation in this process getting here. And I want to also recognize, as Corey mentioned, that at the first public hearing, we were very supportive of the demolition of the 1960 Fellowship Hall and the construction of a new building on this portion, the northwestern portion of the site. And we focused most of our comments, or many of our comments, on the relationship between the new building and the church, particularly at the 7-story wing in front of the parish house, and asked them to explore design and/or massing options for this portion, including removing it and adding it to the top, sort of making the main bulk of the building taller. And we also asked for some additional design and details to be more articulated, so additional design changes and details. And then at the last public meeting, the applicants had restudied the details in general. So I think addressed some of the detail and design questions. And then they also explained the logistic, zoning, and legal challenges with trying to make the building taller, but also focused on, and we saw a presentation about what a taller building would look like that didn't have the wing versus what the building looked like with the wing. They did instead try to increase or enhance the relationship between the two buildings by opening up the base more with the arched colonnade. And that resulted in the 7-story wing being increased an additional story. So at that time, the commission was split on the response to the massing question. And some of us supported the building with the wing, especially if the wing could be returned to 7 stories. And I did that in part because I felt that eliminating the wing and increasing the height of the building actually resulted in a building that overwhelmed the church more. So we had a discussion about that. A few commissioners still had concerns about the wing and its relationship to the parish house, and a few commissioners were on the fence. So today, the revised proposal reduces the height of the wing back down to 7 stories, and the applicants have revised the arches to enhance the relationship to the parish house and the church and increase the view to those as well. So I think they've continued to make changes in response to our comments, and I think we'll sort of start and see where we are. I'm going to start with myself and those of us who supported so that I can see if we're on the path that where we haven't, where commissioners haven't changed their mind, and then we'll work away from there. So with the respect to the construction of the new building, I find that the size of this building, where it's sited, and its design and style and materials to be appropriate to the church and the building. We have seen, the applicants have shown us, and we know from our own experience that historically once rural churches often redeveloped portions of their property as the city grew up around their churches, and the juxtapositions are part of how churches have evolved within their urban context. We see that this practice is even evident in this very in the development history of this very church, which has twice before redeveloped the eastern portion of its site with apartment buildings, which included the demolition of the parsonage building at the time of the second development. And I also feel that the construction of the new building at the northwestern portion of the lot along Jerome Avenue is in keeping with this tradition, sort of building around the church. And I think that the careful siting of the new building will maintain the existing unobstructed views of the main frontage of the church from the south and southwest, and will maintain a significant amount of green space in the front and side of the church, retaining that feeling of a church in the field. And while a portion of the building still overlaps the parish house from Jerome Avenue, it is only a portion of the parish house, not the church itself. And I think that the parish house is still visible as one walks along Jerome Avenue North from the southwest corner to the main entrance of the church. So I think you still see the building in its whole, in its entirety from Jerome Avenue until you get to that one particular spot. And I think that the improved design and details relate to the architecture of the church and the parish house, in particular, the Gothic arches at the 7-story wing will do 2 important things. One, at 19 feet tall, they'll open up the view from the pedestrian to the church and parish house from Jerome Avenue. So that even in that one moment where it does overlap, there is a view into it and a sort of beckoning through it. And 2, as an architectural feature, this design, these arches are really a kind of a key feature to relating the building to the church and parish house and sort of making this a more thoughtful complex than the 2 previous apartment buildings did when they were constructed. And then I think as for the rest of the building, the materials are very compatible. The level of detail now after resolving it through a couple of public meetings also relates very well to the church and the parish house. And, finally, I think while we do lose some green space at the back of the parish house, I find it interesting that the new building, which is U-shaped, creates this intimate and harmonious close space, which is also a feature that is typical of religious complexes. So we've got a lot of green space still left on the front and the side, and at the back where we lose a little, we gain another traditional feature for a religious institution. So I think all in all, this project, I supported it last time. I think it's made strides since the last public meeting because of our good comments, and I think it's fully appropriate at this time. So I'm going to turn to my colleague to my right, who was also very supportive last time. And as I said, I'll kind of walk through those who supported and see if their feelings remain the same, and then we'll go through there. So Commissioner Bland, would you like to go next?
Well, I'm delighted to know that I'm still in your right. And I didn't mean that politically. I just meant it, those wonderful days when we would actually sit around a real table. You've said so much that I support, so I don't need to add a whole lot, but let me add a little bit more because I've been very interested in this problem, let's call it, because it's such a juicy and wonderful problem to solve architecturally. And I think although the applicant was great to bring in Calvary, there are two other wonderful instances that I know very well. We can put in that long historical pattern of a church, and in these cases, Episcopal churches, adding to their campuses, or let's say an adjacent building responding to the extraordinary historical importance of what is next to them. And I'm thinking both of Trinity Church and the building north of, which was called the Trinity Building, 111 Broadway, which of course articulated its windows. Trinity did not build it, but it felt compelled to respond, as did the same kind of a building north of Grace Church on Broadway at 11th Street. So there's a great history of this happening, which I think is important to note. In addition to all the things that you mentioned, Sarah, I want to say a couple of more things. I was never as worried, let's say, or concerned about the top of the building as I was about this view that we're looking at right now, and getting this right. Therefore, getting the arches right was very important to me. But let me say one other thing about this 7-story, and I support the 7 stories. It's an advance over the 8 stories that we had. Actually, to me, it increases the interest of this experience by having it there. Just obliterating it and not having it there doesn't seem to create this sense of wonder as you walk through the arcade. I've always been interested in this idea of the kinetic quality of architecture, and I don't mean kinetic during an earthquake. I mean kinetic, meaning as a person passes through. And so passing through this arcade will be an extraordinary experience, enhancing immeasurably, in my judgment, the appreciation of the whole complex, and particularly the church, since that wonderful archway will be on alignment with the new walkway. The new change of materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which you've already explained. And I'm speaking too long, and I want to move to the next person, but I'm very much in support of it, and I appreciate the long and winding path that we put the applicant through to get here, but I think it was really been worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Lutfi, I think you supported this last time, so I wanted to see how your feelings were now after today's presentation. Oh, you're muted.
I am going to echo some of the things that have been said by you and Fred, because I have been supportive of the project from the beginning, because I think it's an important project for the church. I mean, and I think the outcome of the work that's been done here is going to really speak to that and address the needs of the church, which is critical. And I also think it's going to be very important for the community. And in a way, these buildings being so close to each other really speaks to that importance. I mean, this is what religious institutions are all, religious institutions are about. They're about there are these buildings where people come to worship, but in truth, they're about connectivity with the community. And I think this church has is connected to the community and has fostered development around it to not only help itself financially, but also help grow the community and further that connectivity. I think this project really helps the church and really helps to strengthen that connection. And I think that, you know, on these projects where we ask the applicants to go back several times, to do more work, to address our issues, it's incredibly wonderful when they hear us and they respond in a way that not only addresses our concerns, but makes the project even stronger than it, you know, was at the beginning. And the last time we saw it, and I already thought it was a strong project then. So I want to say that I am excited about where it is. I think all the changes to the building work, the church, for the church, the doors, the windows, etc. And I would like to move to page 16 for a minute, because Fred, who really pushed on the Gothic arches, and I was not so sure they needed to be as authentic as they are right now, but I want to say I think that was a great move. And this view, which you referenced, Fred, is an extraordinary view, because, you know, the arches speak to each other, and I feel like, as not even someone walking through, but looking through right now, that I'm truly making this passage to this space that is going to unfold. And when you go to 17, it does unfold in a wonderful way. And you really get this sense that these two buildings and this campus works well together. I think the changes that the applicant made on I'm fine with the reduction in height. It's always a great thing. I think the changes that the applicant made to the north side in terms of the you know, sort of the change in the windows so that there's some syncopation, and also the texture of the building, are wonderful. And I really think that the new brick pattern that they're calling like this water table at the base really unifies the base, and actually adds a nice additional articulation to the building that works well. And I am excited to support this, and I hope we can all get on the same page and vote for this project.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Chapin, you, I believe, were also supportive of it last time, and I wonder how you're feeling about this now.
Thank you, Sarah. First, obviously, I approve the demolition, and I agree with the comments of previous commissioners that the design the refinements have moved it further along the path of having a good relationship with the new building and the existing landmark. I think for all of us, because, well, maybe not, but at least for me, I think the biggest thing was how are we going to meet the challenge of a large building next to an individual landmark, which is a situation we see obviously on a regular basis at the commission. I feel in this case, I started thinking about, you know, the entirety of that. And for me, the critical issue is how the public continues to perceive the landmark. And I feel that the church in this design stands well framed on its site from the south and southwest. One has a really good sense of it, and it really stands as a beautiful artifact. The parish house, as you're walking along, as you are on the individual scale of a person walking by this site, you will have a sense of views of it as you're going, and it will begin to reveal itself increasingly as you come up to and you see the resonance of the arches, and then you come in through the archway. And the parish house is finally actually seen really on an intimate scale. You really have a sense of that building. It's not lost at all. It is, in fact, in some ways, sort of enhanced by the courtyard views. But I feel that what has been most important to me throughout is really preserved this sense of what does the church and the parish house look like. You can see them there. You have a real sense of both buildings and their relationship as well in this design. So that was what I was most concerned about. And I think that this design has preserved that. And even in some ways, as Commissioner Bland was suggesting, I think that the design has in some ways even enhanced your experience of the parish house and its relationship to the church. So I can improve this based on what I see the public perception of the landmark structures will be, that it has not been lost, that it is preserved in this new design. And I also think, that the new design is fine and has been improved by the recent changes.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, I think last time you were supportive of a wing being here with arches, but you did want to see that wing be returned to 7 stories. So today it has been returned to 7 stories and there have been enhancements at the base. So I'm wondering how you're feeling now.
I can support this proposal for many reasons, and one of them is the composition. I think works very well, and although it's connected to the church is still dominant, and and from all views. And 2, I think the circulation through the arcade is quite beautiful. It's classical and it works very well. The materiality and the changes in the material really kind of ties this together in a very sophisticated way, especially at the pedestrian level. And it holds it together. And finally, the repetition of elements, what I call repetition of elements, the arch openings, ties the base level together. So it's 4 or 5 things that are very well handled here. And lowering the building to 7 stories works very well. So I can approve it.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Commissioner Holford-Smith, I think you were one of the commissioners who wasn't quite there yet last time. So I wanted to hear how you're feeling after these changes today.
I think the combination of lowering the wing to 7 stories and the better proportion and articulation of the arcade, for me, has I can support this application. I think that the dominance of the landmark remains, and I really think that the arcade, raising it and giving it the better proportions, really enhances the relationship of the 2 buildings together. And I really agree that that moment when you walk in the arcade and see the parish house beyond is really quite magical. So I am now completely on board with this application.
Okay, great. Commissioner Shamir Baron, you also weren't quite there last time. I'm wondering how you're feeling.
Yes, I'm in agreement with so much of what's been said. Just the refinement on every level. I think the attention, the returned attention of the owner and of the architect to this has mattered, again, in the refinement of these details and the lowering of the height and trying to massage this thing to work it. So I can absolutely support it. I would say that there's still one detail, if I could, that I think is not as resolved as I think it could be, and that's the one on the southern side of the arcade. where there are the arched windows. One of the, I think, let me see, I don't know what the page is. I think it was page 10, I believe. And basically the height of the windows in drawn elevation, that one is fine. It kind of lifts up to accommodate the slope in the ground. And I think that it's a bit awkward. I'm actually sitting here right now looking at Calvary, and there's something, you know, the abstraction of the arches is in the roof, at the kind of the penthouse level that I'm looking at right now, remind me that I think that this would be more successful if it was a true sort of window, that it picked one of those datum lines and the higher one potentially, or the lower one, and allowed us to allowed the people who were passing through the arcade to actually read the slope against the arches or not, or to see it beyond as a different kind of, again, sloping condition. So I think that this is a bit awkward and could be resolved better, but otherwise I'm absolutely now in support of what they have proposed.
Commissioner Chen, last time you were sort of on the fence. So
Right.
Yeah. Where you are now.
Yeah, as you know, I was one of those that's struggling as well, and I think I agree with all the comments that's been made this morning. I think collectively, this commission, together with the public comment and the feedback and the applicant's modification, has vastly improved the thing. I do agree with Commissioner Adi's comment that. Those windows that are not in alignment needs further study. That I do agree. But in terms of detailing the proportion, I mean, it is what it is. This is a very tough site because you got a constraint physically of a very important church building and landmark church building, and then to put down in context, I can support it given the refinement.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Commissioner Goldblum, you had very strong feelings about the overlap at the parish. I'm wondering where you are now.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly agree that the demolition is appropriate. I certainly agree that the construction of a new building on this site is appropriate. I agree that the north wing has improved and its north-facing facade is appropriate. I remain opposed to the wing that blocks the chapter house. I think it's standard LPC practice to try to preserve views from the street of significant portions of buildings, and I don't see why this would be any different. I think that the details have definitely improved, and the passage through the arcade is definitely better by virtue of their having studied the detailing of the arches and the correlation of the arches with the view and with the existing building. Those are all positive improvements, but they don't get to the heart of the issue. If you look at the examples that the applicant produced as support for his application, none of them blocks a major view of a major portion of a historic building. None of them. And if you look on the page that is page, I guess it's 15, where the applicant is suggesting that there will be some viewing of the chapter house. If you look at the image at the bottom right of that same page, go back to 15, you'll see that the photograph that is the before doesn't really show the photograph, the same view that is shown in the rendering above. So I have my doubts as to whether even this partial view will be available to the public. And even if it is, the notion that a major portion of a new building could obscure for a large portion of the public way a major element of a historic building is, in my opinion, something that we would not consider in most other situations and should not consider here.
Thank you. Commissioner Decker, you also had concerns about the overlapping wing with the parish house, and I'm wondering where your thoughts are now.
Sarah, it's always an interesting thing dealing with a church that, you know, has a mission, which is worship and fellowship and discipleship and the ministry, and then we come along and we have our absolutely secular concerns. It's really interesting juxtaposition that we have to deal with. I struggled with this one greatly, and I have come to the conclusion, following your very eloquent conversation in the beginning of this, that I can be in approval of it. The opening a little bit more of the arcade to me is what has done it. I think Ann said it. The church building itself remains the dominant presence on the site, and so as a result of that, I can find it approvable.
And Commissioner Gustafson, you were also in the group that had some concerns with this overlap.
Boy, if I had to bet every penny I had that I was going to be the last one on this. I agree with Commissioner Goldblum and the in every way, which is to say, you know, demolition's fine, the adding of a new building there is fine, even the location of it, design, the restoration work. But I am in his camp as well on the north wing, and I just want to flesh that out just a little bit. The applicant and a number of other of the commissioners focus on this, what we've referred to as this magical moment where the church and the parish house reveal themselves. They reveal themselves on private property, and we can call it a community gathering area all we want, but that gate can be closed, and the views that we concern ourselves with are not those for people who have private access, but for those who are in the general public. And on the public, from a public way, I think is the expression, with which could be the subway, could be the sidewalk, etc. You know, I visited now this site now twice since we started doing this. And the second time, because I kept hearing that this Parks building was blocking the views of this magical moment anyway, and that's just not true. It's not. If you'd argued that some of the leaves on the trees were blocking it, I might have said, okay, but the Parks building is not. And so we are taking something away. And we also have this focus on the, what they call the entrance side of the building. They sort of subtly try to focus you on the north side where the main entrance is. There are really two dramatic, it's a corner building that has two dramatic, distinctive and important facades, the north and as well as the west. And this is sort of the magical moment, I agree. The site started with a 360 degree views, and in the 1920s it was reduced probably by 110% degrees of views. And so this time again, we're going to reduce it, another 60, 70 degrees, something like that. That additional 15 degrees, I think that's the difference between the building with the north wing and the building without is a critical area. It's a critical view, and that's because of everyone's focus on this magical moment. So giving us back that one view is important, because it is, I think, in the applicant's admission, as well as many of the commissioners, the most important one. And unless you're going to tell me that this is becoming public property, I love the view when you go through the arches. I do agree. However, I haven't been told that that's public property.
Okay, thanks. All right, and then, we haven't talked much about the changes to the church and parish house, because I think we discussed them at the last public meeting. But just to put that on the record, there's the replacement of the doors to the parish house, and At the original public hearing, we asked that they do solid panels. They could have the glazed panels on the top, but solid panels on the bottom. And by our last public meeting, they had made that change. And so I think we were all supportive of removing and replacing those doors with new doors with a glazed upper panel. Similarly, I think everyone expressed support for replacing the non-historic stained glass with new lozenge-shaped leaded glass that would relate to the historic transoms above. So I think we're all supportive of the window change as well. That's part of the second application. Okay, so again, I want to thank everybody for their thoughtful comments. I think even where we still don't have full support, your comments have pushed this project a long way, have improved the design, the level of articulation, and the detailing. And those who have been supportive, of course, your comments as well have really enhanced the articulation of the base and the arcade. And I think that the applicant can continue to think about how to resolve the bottom of the arcade and the alignment at the base of the arcade as well. So I think we, as of now, have support enough to approve both applications. So I'll go ahead and I will make the motions. So let me get to, I had a Gmail problem, so I've got to pull this up a different way, but hang on. In the matter of, I'm going to do the window and door application first. In the matter of LPC docket 21-02093, 2500 Jerome Avenue, the St. James Episcopal Church and Parish House, individual landmark, a Gothic revival style church and parish house designed by Henry Dudley and constructed in 1863. This is an application to replace windows and doors. And I recommend approval, finding that both of the pointed arch stained glass windows to be replaced have been modified and feature replacement stained glass window sashes, that the existing window transoms and brick molds will be retained and repaired, that the design and details of the tracery at the replacement sash will replicate aspects of the historic tracery at the transoms, that the woodwork of the existing historic doors to be replaced is not unique, and the decorative metal hardware, including the cast iron straps, will be reused on the new doors.
Warning on the pomegranate.
That the replacement doors will match the historic doors in terms of material, operation, and finish, and that the new doors will feature lower wood panels, maintaining the solidity of the historic wood doors, and glazing at the upper panels of the door in keeping with glazing sometimes found at paneled doors of buildings of this age and style. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Rich, will you call the vote on the first application?
Yes. Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Nay.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Nay.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Letby,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and 2 opposed, the motion carries.
We'll do the second application in the matter of docket number LPC 21-01518, 2500 Jerome Avenue, the St. James Episcopal Church and Parish, an individual landmark, a Gothic revival style church and parish house designed by Henry Dudley and constructed in 1863. And this is an application to demolish the existing 1960s Fellowship Hall and construct a new building on the landmark site. And I note that the St. James Episcopal Church and Parish site comprises the circa 1860 Gothic Revival style church, circa 1892 Parish House addition, and circa 1960 Fellowship Hall addition, sited on approximately 1 acre lot bound by St. James Park and Recreation Center to the northeast and the Jerome Avenue elevated subway to the west. The lot also features substantial green space at the front and side of the property in front of the church and an asphalt driveway and parking lot. Staff further note that the two apartment buildings at 2525 and 2501 Morris Avenue were constructed within the footprint of the original lot, the former by the church in 1938 and the latter on the former site of the stone parsonage, which was sold by the church in circa 1963. And I recommend approval, finding that the 1960 Fellowship Hall is not one of the features for which the site was designated, and its demolition will not diminish the special architectural and historic character of the individual landmark. That historically, once rural churches often redeveloped portions of their property as the city grew up around their church buildings. That St. James Church has twice before redeveloped the eastern portion of its site with apartment buildings, and the construction of a new building at the northwest portion of the lot along Jerome Avenue is in keeping with this tradition. That the careful siting of the new building will obtain a significant amount of green space at the front of the church, facing East 190th Street and the southern end of the side of the church facing Jerome Avenue, and will maintain the existing unobstructed views of the church from the south and southwest. That the views of the church from the north from the park are currently blocked and compromised by the park recreational building, and the view of the northwest facade of the church from Jerome Avenue is seen in context with the church built 1920s apartment building, and therefore blocking these views will not have a significant impact on the appreciation of the church from these public thoroughfares. That the proposed U-shaped building will create an intimate and harmonious close at the northern end of the site. That the materials of the proposed building featuring rusticated, smooth, and Roman-style gray brick, red cast stone, and raked joints will echo the materials palette of the church building in a contemporary way. That the change in material and bond at the window spandrels will create contrast and add architectural interest to the facades. That the canopy will be well scaled to the entrance and simply designed, helping it remain a harmonious secondary presence. That the relatively simple details of the proposed building's facade elements, the patterned brickwork, and the use of casement windows will maintain a level of articulation which will be compatible with the church building. That the axial approach to the parish house and the west facade of the church from Jerome Avenue will be through a Gothic arch and metal gate, recalling design elements of the historic church without replicating them. That the 19-foot high entrance portal and arcade featuring a series of pointed Gothic arches that relate to arches on the church will provide open views of the historic church. That the simple design, small scale, and materials and finish palette of the one-story community hall building will help to provide a harmonious transition between the apartment building and the historic church building, and that the proposed materials of the interior courtyard will relate well to the historic church building and will be in keeping with those typically found at church courtyards. And I recommend that the applicants continue to study the resolution of the base of the arcade. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
And Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire, Commissioner Devonshire, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Goldblum,
Nay.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Nay.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Leftfy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and 2 opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, so that's approved. Thank you, and thanks to everyone for participating in this robust process.
Okay, we're now going to move to public hearing items before returning to a couple of meeting items at the end of the day. So the first public hearing item is item number 1. This is LPC 20-10489, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 2566, lot 14, 98 Milton Street in the Greenpoint Historic District. This is a frame house built in 1855. The application is to alter the primary facade and construct a rear yard addition.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Please note that staff will be walking you through the components of the proposal, and the applicants are available for questions afterwards. And staff, you may begin.
Good morning, commissioners. Dina Tasswinter, preservation staff. There's some construction going on next door, so I apologize in advance if you can hear that. But the item before you is 98 Milton Street, a frame house located between Manhattan Avenue and Franklin Street in the Greenpoint Historic District. The application is to install a portico and balustrades at the primary entrance and stoop and to construct a rear yard addition. Commissioners will note that the primary facade has been extensively altered over time and that the applicants are proposing staff level restorative work at this facade, including reintroducing clapboard siding, a cornice, multi-light windows, wood window surrounds, and so on. The only aspect of the work before you today is the proposed portico and associated balusters, since, as you can see in this 1940s tax photo, the entrance of this particular building historically featured attached pilasters rather than a projecting portico. So these are the existing conditions at the altered front facade. And these are some prototypical examples of entrances found at similar building types along the block and within the district. While some of these show non-historic metal railings, the proposal at the subject premises is to restore wood balustrades and newel posts at the stoop, similar to what you can see here at 130 Kent Street. These existing and proposed elevations, again, show some restorative work that will be at staff level, but I'm drawing your attention to the door surround. And here are the details for the proposed portico and railings. And this axonometric view, which is showing the proposed conditions, as well as a preview of the rear facade, which I will now review. The proposed one-story rear yard addition is only being brought forth for your review due to the fact that fewer than 50% of buildings of a similar type along this block currently feature rear yard additions. Of the additions that are currently present, all are between 1 and 3 stories in height and project varying depths into the existing rear yard. The proposed addition at the subject premises will be 1 story in height and will have a shallower projection into the rear yard than the majority of others within this donut. Also, due to the size of the house and its placement within the lot, as you can see, the new addition will not project further than the neighboring buildings on either side. This shows the existing shed that will be removed, and the 1-story addition will be in this location. While the second floor and the pitched roof are partially visible from Noble Street, the 1-story proposed addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfare. Here are the existing and proposed rear elevations. The addition will feature clapboard siding, metal window and door assemblies, and a terrace railing and stair. The enlarged door opening that you see above is also staff level work. And then here, just this axon showing the full scope of work and some existing and proposed views, again, showing the full scope. So to summarize, the components before you today are the installation of the portico and balustrades at the primary facade and the construction of a 1-story rear yard addition. The applicants are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice presentation, Dina. Commissioners, do we have any questions for either Dina or the applicants? All right, I'm not seeing any questions at this time. So why don't we see if we have any public testimony, and then we can come back to that. So if you're here and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And as always, we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance, and I'll turn it over to Lisa Krasavage to walk us through the testimony.
Great, thank you, Sarah. We had 2 people sign up, and we'll start with Kelly Carroll, followed by Mark Bench. So Kelly, I've brought you in.
There we go. Okay. Good morning, Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. This house is another successful example of how including altered architecture in historic districts can pay off in the long term. Greenpoint would not be Greenpoint without its 1850s vernacular frame houses, and HDC applauds the remarkable transformation proposed for 98 Milton Street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, Mark Bench. And Mark, I've brought you in. If you could just state your name for the record, please. You just need to unmute yourself and you can turn on your camera if you choose.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Good morning. Mark Bench, board member of the Victorian Society Metropolitan Chapter, New York. Chair Carroll and commissioners, a very good morning. Founded in New York in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of historic districts, individual landmarks, interiors, and civic art. The Victorian Society in New York enthusiastically supports this proposal for facade restoration and a relatively modest addition to the rear of this house. So many wood houses in the city from the mid-19th century have been stripped and altered as this one has. It's often impossible even to imagine the interest and charm of these streets when they were new. This proposal, based on historic photos, similar houses in the neighborhood, and most commendably, physical investigation of the house itself, appears to meet all the criteria for an appropriate restoration. The rear addition is modest, not visible from the public way, and is limited to the lower floors, and we believe it is therefore also appropriate. We suggest the applicant investigate the use of acetylated pine for the restored facade elements instead of hardwood. Acetylated wood is easier to work, hold paints very well, is forgiving of maintenance lapses, and will probably outlast commercially available hardwoods and cedar unless they are old growth. Finally, we suggest that the feasibility of this proposed restoration is an indication that such alterations in themselves should not preclude the designation of otherwise worthy buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, do we have any additional written testimony?
Yes, we do have a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 1 recommending approval and a letter from a constituent in opposition to the project.
Okay. All right. I think I'd like to just turn to the applicants and see if they would like to make any final comments or respond to anything that's been said or answer any questions we might have. So if the applicant is present, can we have them unmute?
We are present. There's three of us.
Okay.
And we're happy to answer any questions. We're delighted to hear the testimony from the two testifiers, and we're very grateful to the commission for its attention this morning.
Great, thank you. And I just had one question. It's a very sort of detailed question, but at the front portico, your columns are set in and the entablature sort of goes beyond it. And I'm just wondering, is that a sort of typical? I sort of imagine these being, in my memory, sort of being typically aligned with the entablature and not set in. And I don't know if you thought about that detail or had made that decision purposely.
I think that decision was made based on precedents we saw in the district, but we're happy to modify the proportions if the commission deems it more appropriate to do so.
So did you see others where the columns were set in?
I believe so. I think in the precedent images that Dina walked us through in previous pages, it looks like one of the images we included had a similar entablature relationship. There it is.
I see it 102 Milton.
Sarah, just for the record, I believe that building referenced there is one that was restored at some point in the past, not an original portico. So it may or may not be replicating authentic details in that particular case.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners, do we have any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead and just unmute yourself.
Just an alignment question. If you go to your back facade, the elevation, and you see the alignment of the second floor and the windows on the third floor, and the cluster of windows that you have don't align with the ones on the third floor. And I'm just wondering, why is that? Is that just because of the space inside, or it's just a design issue?
You're correct, Commissioner. It's dictated by the interior layouts. Given the modest size of the interior spaces, the proportion and the alignment of these two clusters of windows are they're driven by the interior layouts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just confirming that the rear facade is not visible from any public way. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, I think we don't have any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start to unmute everybody so we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
Great. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. So we have two components. One is the creation of the portico and alterations to the front entrance, and the other is for the one-story rear yard addition at the rear. Commissioner Devonshire, would you like to start this one?
I will, and I think that pretty much everything is appropriate about this. I applaud the applicant for turning this building around, and I would also say that I think the discussion about the portico is correct, and there's probably enough information, both written and pictorial, to find an accurate historic reproduction of this. I think Corey said it well, that the one that they used as an example is probably a recreation. And I would say work with the staff and develop a portico that's accurate.
Okay, great. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Devonshire. This is appropriate and I can support it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bland?
Agree. A great project, actually. Just work with staff, particularly on the front entrance.
Mayor Lutfi?
I agree. It's a terrific project. Thank you for the TLC. And I agree with the modifications.
Okay, and Commissioner Jefferson?
Oh, it's so much more improved than what was there. It's really quite lovely.
Okay, and
I can approve it.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron?
I agree with everyone's comments. This is absolutely appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree. It's going to be a major improvement to the little house, and as long as they work with staff and the portico, I'm in approval.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, it's great to see this restored, and I agree with the comments of other commissioners, including the portico. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks. And, I agree as well.
You
and
skipped me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
I think we're going to make me go last every single item today, right? That's the plan. No, I agree. I agree. It's appropriate.
Sorry about that, John. Okay, I'm working around my imaginary table. So, and I agree. And I just, for the record, also want to say that the rear addition, while it's before us is a technicality because there aren't 50% of other houses with similar additions. It's within a context of that has a variety of additions of, from 1 to 3 stories and different depths. And this modest 1-story addition fits well within that context and is not visible from any public thoroughfare. So we're, I think, all comfortable with that as well. So Commissioner Devonshire, would you make the motion?
Absolutely. In the matter of 98 Milton Street in the Greenpoint Historic District, an application to alter the primary facade and construct a rear yard addition, I recommend approval, finding that the primary facade has been highly altered over time and therefore the proposed work will not result in the elimination of any significant architectural features or historic fabric. The installation of a portico and balustrades will help return this frame house to a condition more in keeping with its original appearance. That the proposed architectural features are based on prototypical details, materials, and finishes found on buildings of this age and type within the historic district. That the proposed 1-story rear yard addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfare. That the addition will be in keeping with other additions within this block in terms of height and depth, and will feature a clapboard siding and solid to void ratio that's compatible with the residential scale and character of the house, thereby helping it to harmonize with its context. That the proposed addition will not project further into the rear yard than other buildings on the block and therefore will not diminish a cohesive central green space, and the work will not detract from the special architectural character of the Greenpoint Historic District. And the applicant will work with staff to determine proper proportions and placement of portico elements to replicate historic precedents.
And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Second motion.
Okay, thank you. Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
It's approved, and just continue to work with the staff on the resolving the portions of the portico. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of the commissioners.
Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
The next item is number 2, LPC 21-00136, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1222, Lot 7501, 875 St. Mark's Avenue in the Crown Heights North Historic District. A Romanesque revival style row house designed by Langston and Dahlander and built in circa 1891. The application is to legalize facade work and the installation of a mailbox in non-compliance with Certificate of No Effect 16-7468.
Commissioners, the applicants and staff have joined the hearing. Please note that staff will be walking through the components of the proposal, and then the applicant will explain some further details. And staff, you may begin. Please remember to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Commissioners. Caroline Passion, Preservation staff. The subject property is located on the north side of the street, mid-block between Brooklyn and Kingston Avenues. This building is one of a pair of houses with an exposed secondary facade facing east towards this church. The designation photos seen here on the left and center show the conditions at the time of designation in 2007. The photo on the right shows the building's current conditions. And commissioners, I just want you to note in the center photo at this projecting bay, there are these decorative metal elements seen here and some heavy molded paneling at the upper stories. So in 2014, several violations were issued against the property for work performed throughout the building without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits. This included alterations to this 3-story and 2-story projecting bays at this east facade. And that included the removal of the decorative pressed metal elements, pilasters, and molded panel details, cornices, and other architectural elements that were present at the time of designation. And these bays were completely resurfaced in stucco. So a year later, in 2015, a certificate of no effect was issued to address, correct, and modify all work done without permits, and the upper drawing shows the proposed corrective work. This permit approved restoring and installing decorative pressed metal imbrication at the 3-story and 2-story projecting bays, as well as removing a mailbox installed at the front areaway without permits. However, the restorative work at these projecting bays and the removal of the mailbox were not done in accordance with the permit. And so the application before you today is to legalize the stuccoed condition at these 2 projecting bays, to review the proposed corrective work at these bays, and to legalize the installation of this mailbox at the front areaway. This is here taken from the street. The mailbox is here located directly in front of the stoop. The applicant is proposing to recreate the fish scale details, paneling, and cornices all in stucco. And although staff can approve substitute materials at the secondary facade, there aren't clear enough photographic evidence or historic documentation for the proposed design and details at these 2 bays in the substitute material. And as for the mailbox, staff can approve a freestanding mailbox, but not of this particular size and design. And the architect is here to answer any questions about the history of the project or details about the corrective work.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay. Would the applicant like to add anything at this point? Just to talk a little bit about how what were formerly metal details will be replicated in stucco. I think that would be helpful to hear a little bit more about.
Yes, I would, if I could. Let's see. Good morning, Chairperson Carol and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this application. I'd like to kind of explain a little bit about this building and how we came to the place where we are right now, if that's possible.
Yes, please.
One of the interesting things about this building is it was designed by Magnus Dahlander in conjunction with Frederick Langston. And Magnus Dahlander was a very prolific builder and designer of brownstones in Brooklyn between 1888 and 1896. He developed buildings in Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, Park Slope, Clinton Hill, and Prospect Heights. And in this particular case, this Romanesque revival building was very eclectic. It had engaged columns, stone transom bars, rough face limestone, Victorian elements such as these secondary bays, and voussoirs in the front. One of the other distinctive elements were the fish scale roofs. Magnus Dahlander was very well known for creating very distinctive facades where he had used fantastic shapes, gargoyles, different materials, carved work, and various other things. So it was a very unique building, and the fact that it's got this asymmetrical, can I control the slides in some way?
Yes, if you click on the screen, you should be able to advance the slides either using your arrow key or your mouse.
Okay, let's see what I can do here. Clicking on the screen. It's not, doesn't seem to be working.
Caroline, you still have control of the presentation, so if you can advance the slide as needed.
Okay, where do you want, Guy?
To the second page, which shows the facades, if we could. Next one, there you go. So as you can see, it's got this distinctive round turret with the rustication on it, and it's paired with 873 right next to it. So it was a very unique and interesting building. Historic Register District, so it had quite a provenance. And let me just also explain to you why we're at the place we're at. In early 2013, the developer Boaz Gilad, who was the founder of Brooklyn Capital, bought this building and started the process of converting it into condos. Boaz Gilad, if you don't know, was a very, very prolific developer. He owned over 100 properties and developed over 2,000 apartments in Brooklyn. He even wrote a book called The Real Estate Millionaire: How to Invest in Rental Markets and Make a Fortune. And he derived a lot of his money from borrowing money and pension funds. In 2013, he filed an Alt-1 to convert each floor from 1 apartment to 2 apartments and convert them into condos. And in 2014, the current owners bought into the building. It had just gotten a C of O, and they were assured that the developer would finish up the work and get the final C of O. Very shortly afterwards, in 2014, they received 10 violations, 9 of which were landmarks violations. The architect of record, Rami Isaac, withdrew. I believe the builder also. Architect took over, Brent Porter, in 2015. He submitted the new permit and the new application to landmarks. Also submitted to the DOB, but then withdrew from the DOB. But before that, Landmarks gave him the permit that you see to show the work, the restorative work. And if we go, yes, that slide, thank you, Caroline. The upper slide shows that facade, that secondary facade that was approved. In the course of the years, there were some things done by the developer to comply with the landmarks permit, but then things kind of went downhill and he stopped working on it. And in 2017, the building filed legal documents to his lawyers. Then Brooklyn Capital began having more and more legal problems. They were over leveraged. They started losing properties. They were evicted from their offices. And in 2019, Boaz Gilad resigned from Brooklyn Capital and left the country, essentially leaving the owners of the building holding the bag. In 2019, the owners filed a letter with the Attorney General. So I just wanted to give you that background to understand a little bit of the history of. We have worked with Landmarks and the staff to resolve all of the violations except for the projecting bays and mailboxes. And instead of having to really destroy the existing projecting bays, which in essence still have their same form, we tried to find a solution that would work for them as far as disturbance to the building and their financial capabilities. And the decision, which was reached in conjunction with the landmark staff was to try and replicate the details of the bays in stucco rather than having to rip out what was there, rebuild them, and try to duplicate the materials. And the other problem was we had no real good photographs of the detail work. We were able to look at it closely, as close as I could. And I think the first bay, call it bay number 1 on your left of the screen, is very close to what we can see from the photographs that was there. So we're asking to try and duplicate these details, including the fish scale metal roof, the framework, and some of the pilasters on the lower level. We're suggesting using fiberglass to replace the pilasters. And we believe that we can duplicate most of these details with stucco. There are some lunettes we're proposing putting over the existing arched windows, and that would probably be done with wood. So on the second bay, it's very hard to see what was there originally. The cornice at the top is existing. We're proposing keeping it there and then doing the rest of the work with stucco with the fish scale roofs, the arches, and some of the brackets underneath the sills. And if I can go to the next slide, Caroline, and show the details. I used the Victorian pattern books that I could find, such as Bicknell's pattern books and things like that, to try and come up with some details that we couldn't see, such as the decorative pilaster capitals and the bases, and try to recreate the spirit of what was originally there. We do know that we could see, if you can see the first bay, that we're able to pretty much duplicate what was originally there. And the developer did put in a stained glass window, and I believe that staff is okay with the stained glass window that's there. We couldn't see or didn't even know what the original stained glass window looked like. So the fact that they did put in a stained glass window is one advantage, I think, and staff seems to be, and Landmark seems to be okay with that. And then the medallion and framing is pretty much what we can see. That was what was in the original photograph. If I can, Caroline, if we can go back to the designation picture, you can see, it's kind of hard to see because this is the best photograph we could get, that there is that framework up there, and it's very close to what I can actually discern from looking at this with a microscope. So the fact is that they did put in curved windows. The bay's original shapes are pretty much the same, but now we are requesting that Landmarks works with us and allows us to keep those existing bays as they are and then try to recreate the details as best we can in stucco. And I think that, and then as far as the mailbox, if I can go to the mailbox for a second. The mailbox, as you can see, is a freestanding metal mailbox. It's got some decorative features that you might consider in the same vocabulary as some Victorian elements. The fact that it is a larger mailbox, and it would be very difficult to put mailbox in the vestibule, I think is one of the benefits that the building prefers, that they are able to get larger packages and whatnot. And I think it's set back far enough from the street so as not to be obtrusive. So we're asking that we are able to legalize the existing mailbox that they did put up there. And I think that's about it. I'm open to any questions, if anybody has any questions. And thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. Commissioner Goldblum, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the fish scales in stucco, since they do kind of act, since they do have some horizontal orientation. Are you confident that they're going to last? I mean, usually stucco is applied to vertical surfaces for the most part, you know, mold, rain, you know, it just seems like that's not a typical installation for stucco.
Well, we're currently researching a higher strength mix that would be used for this type of thing, and we've started to look at some by cathedral stone and some other mixes to try and get a more durable type of stucco for that application, because I do realize that stucco does wear, and so it couldn't be just a regular old cement stucco. It has to be something that has a little bit more durable quality to it.
And is your choice of the stucco related to cost? I mean, there are plenty of places you can get wood shingles. They aren't that expensive.
Well, we were trying to kind of make it as simple in installation as possible. So there's so much stucco work that we see on these bays that we thought that it would be advantageous to have just one person, one company work on that. And I think that you can develop some of these forms fairly easy. I imagine this fish scale stucco to be almost like marzipan, where you lay, you know, layer upon layer to create the sort of layering effect that, and the fish scale, from what I can see, is a very flat pattern. It's not a curved or rounded pattern like you would see on a snake or something like that. It's a very sort of laid on, almost like a baking sheet type of thing. So we also felt that stucco was probably the most cost effective in this particular case.
Go figure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we might not have any other questions at this moment. So we will see if we have public testimony. If you're here in the meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And Caroline, can we just move back to the slide with the Zoom meeting information for the public? And I will turn it over to Lisa to see if we have any testimony. Lisa?
Yes, we didn't have anybody sign up, and I don't see any hands raised.
All right. Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We just have a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 8 recommending approval.
Okay, thanks. Any other final comments, Mr. Cohn, that you'd like to make before we close the hearing?
I think that's about it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And commissioners, no final questions, right? So I am in the process of starting to request to unmute you all so that we can close the hearing. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
Okay. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. And so we have this application before us to actually modify work that was done in non-compliance. So we issued a permit for corrective work. That work was done in non-compliance. Primarily, we issued a permit for replicating the bays in metal, and it was they were resurfaced in stucco. And so the application today is to modify that work in non-compliance to try to replicate details in stucco, keeping it a uniform material. These bays are architectural features. They are on a secondary facade that is seen obliquely. So that is something one can consider as well. And of course, the applicant has also given an explanation of how we got to where we are today. But thinking about the merits of the project, I think that the quality of the work and the visibility of it can be factors you all can consider. And Commissioner Goldblum, since you had some thoughts and questions about the stucco, would you like to start this one?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's generally appropriate. I think that the design is for a secondary facade element that's viewed obliquely. I think it's very laudable that they went to the level of detail and care that they have. I do, I mean, I've seen plenty of amazing stucco jobs in New York. I've never seen one like this. And I'd be shocked if this was the cheapest way to do it, but that's really between them and their stucco guy. I would just ask that the staff work with the applicant to make sure that the application is one that is going to be relatively durable, and that if not, that the staff can approve alternate materials. This application already has in it unconventional alternate materials like fiberglass. And I think that that would be appropriate in this installation. So I would I will bet you that it would be cheaper to use a synthetic or other kind of shingle product than to make them out of stucco, but if they can do it and it's durable, I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Devonshire.
Well, I'm not okay with it. Stucco isn't sheet metal. They had an approval to use sheet metal. Sheet metal shingles can be gotten. I mean, it's a stock item at places like Heather and Little. I think it needs to be in the material that was originally approved.
Okay, Commissioner Chan.
I sort of agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I think I think they need to work with the staff to make sure the best material for it and follow up.
Commissioner Bland.
Well, to complicate it, I'm with Devonshire on this one. I think it should go back to what was originally approved. Although I have admittedly seen some incredible stucco work on Queen Anne style newel posts in Brooklyn Heights, which sort of surprised me. So maybe it can be done, but I think it should be metal.
Okay, and also I just remember to comment on the mailbox as well. We have to address that in the areaway.
I can accept the mailbox as a freestanding item, separate from the house.
Okay, and Michael, or both Michaels, do you want to just quickly go back to the mailbox?
I'm okay with the mailbox, Sarah.
Okay.
Me too.
Same here.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Lutfi?
I have to say I'm concerned about the durability of the stucco as well, and I think metal would be my first choice, but if there's another material, possibly fiberglass, that would have more durability, I would recommend that. So no, I couldn't have this. And I'm fine with the mailbox.
And Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with Commissioner Devonshire, and I'm fine with the mailbox.
And Commissioner Gustafson?
Well, anyone who can use the word marzipan in a landmarks hearing has to get a little bit of a break. That said, I'm with Commissioner Devonshire, and the mailbox is okay.
Commissioner Shamir Barron? Oh, she's had to step away. Okay, Commissioner Holford Smith?
I'll start with the mailbox. I think that's provable as is. As for the shingles, I think that the crispness of metal will read differently than stucco, and I think that it should be easy to apply something on top of the stucco that's there. So I don't think you'd have to necessarily undo what's been done already. So I think everything else is fine, but I would say that the shingles should be done in metal.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin?
I agree with Commissioner Holford Smith that about the shingles, and I think that the applicant should work with the staff on all the material choices, just to make sure that they are the most appropriate in the circumstances. I do appreciate, and I can support the mailbox. And I do think that I appreciate the applicant's lengthy history and discussion of what was there and what happened, so that, you know, because otherwise we'd be very opposed to this based on, you know, the fact that it didn't meet standards that it should have at the time. But I think they're trying their best to remedy everything. So they just need to work with the staff totally on the materials, addressing the commission's concerns about those for all of the installation.
Okay. All right. So I think we had a couple support for the condition as is, given the limited views and secondary nature of the bay and the history. But I think the majority of the commissioners cannot support the stucco because it doesn't have the sort of crisp quality and doesn't successfully recall the sheet metal. So I think we'll do a approval for the mailbox, and I'm wondering if we should leave the shingle question open, so that if they want to explore other alternative materials that might replicate the metal better, they can come back to us, or if they want to do the metal, they can resolve that at staff level. So I'll just go ahead and make a motion for the mailbox today, and we'll take no action on the shingles, so that they have the opportunity to come back to us or resolve it at staff level by recreating it or going back to the original approval. So in the matter of, here we go. Docket number LPC 21-00136, 875 St. Mark's Avenue in the Crown Heights North Historic District, a Romanesque revival style row house designed by Langston and Dollander and built circa 1891. This is an application to legalize facade work and the installation of a mailbox in non-compliance with certificate of no effect 16-7468. And I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Crown Heights North Historic District. And I recommend approval of the mailbox, finding that because of its, that the freestanding installation of the freestanding mailbox did not damage any original or historic fabric at the areaway, that because of its location adjacent to the stoop and set far back from the street, the mailbox does not call undue attention to itself when seen in the context of this landscaped portion of the front areaway, and that the presence of the mailbox does not detract from the architectural character of the building, the streetscape, or the Crown Heights North Historic District. Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Yes, I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
She's out.
okay, Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
thank you, and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 10 in favor and 1 not present, the motion carries.
That's approved in part, and please continue to work with the staff to resolve the second part of this application. All right, we'll move to the next item.
The next item is hearing item number 3, LPC 21-01582, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 619, Lot 23, 224 West 10th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a Greek revival style row house built in 1847 to 48, and the application is to construct a rooftop addition.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the screen, and I'll just put it back into full screen view and state your name for the record. You may begin. You just advance the slides using the arrow keys or the mouse.
Hi. Okay, got it.
All right, thank you. State your name for the record and you may begin.
Morning, my name is Tyler Kane. Thank you very much to the commission for letting me present our project today at 224 West 10th. So just to dive right in, our project includes the removal of existing rooftop skylights and the relocation of a couple mechanical exhaust vents. This allows us to site the proposed new penthouse addition on the existing roof plane. We are adding a new screened HVAC unit on the rear elevation of the building that would be visible from the back, and then adding a maintenance guardrail and FDNY gate at the front, which would not be visible from the street. Just to give you a little bit of background about the site, you can see we are located here in the middle of the Greenwich Village Historic District. To zoom in a little bit to our block, we are on the north side of the block on West 10th. Between the back side of the block is Christopher Street, and this exists between Bleecker Street and Hudson on the east and west. The site in question, this row house was built along with its neighbor in 1848. And then in 1926, there was a significant renovation done to turn this into a multifamily building that included the removal of the front stoop and the first floor entry. There were also changes to some of the windows in the addition of a fire escape. In 1969, this was included in the Greenwich Village Landmark District. And then in 2010, there was a renovation and restoration done to this townhouse. Maybe some of the commissioners here today were part of that approval, that restored the front facade and used the neighboring 226 as the guide for how to replicate the entry condition, restore the front stoop and railing, and have new windows, and as long as along with the restoration of the cornice condition. So this is what we see here today. The brick on the front elevation is original to the building, and then most of the other details were restored as part of that 2010 renovation. On the rear elevation, what is existing today is white painted brick. The openings on the upper stories are original to the building with replaced windows. And then the openings of the lower first floor and garden level of the building were expanded as part of the 2010 renovation, along with the addition of a metal rear porch and railing that goes out a few feet. In talking about visibility, the main concern is the primary facade, visibility on West 10th Street from the north side of the street between Bleecker and Hudson. There is also an incidental view between a gap between two buildings on Christopher Street. So it's about 8 to 10 feet wide, and you can see a little bit of the rear elevation of this through that incidental view. So we'll show you views of both of those. I wanted to walk you through some of the parameters of the site and how we tried to work within those parameters and constraints to construct a penthouse that would minimize visibility, especially from West 10th Street. So this is a roof plan of the existing condition. You can see these are the skylights and roof egress hatch that will be removed as part of this renovation. There are also two existing mechanical exhaust vents that will be relocated to accommodate the new layout. The existing chimneys and HVAC unit on the west side will remain. This site section starts on the north side of West 10th Street, goes through our site and the existing row house. You can see it has a single sloped roof from front to back, cuts through the rear yard, and then through that incidental gap between the two buildings on Christopher Street. So there is some view through that gap to see the rear portion of what we are proposing. The main concern, of course, is the view angle over the existing cornice that will remain of the front of our facade. So this is what we are proposing from a massing perspective. Our goal really was to try to minimize that area of visibility again from West 10th Street. And I can walk you through how and why that volume ended up in its current location. This is a detail section of the top floor of the existing townhouse. So we can see the floor level with a staircase that is typical of the archetype. It's an open stair that goes all the way back down to the garden level floor. This is the top of the existing cornice that will remain. You have that single slope roof and then identification of that primary view angle, which is from the middle of the sidewalk on the north side of West 10th Street. So to begin, in order to provide roof access to the client for a rear terrace, there was a certain amount of overall rise that we had to accommodate. And even if we created the steepest stair that code would allow, it is a kind of given height that leaves us at this level. The number of stairs also require a landing. And so in order to not intrude over the stair that is coming up below us and maintain the line of the stair opening below, we started our landing here and then went up to the roof. Again, alignment with that opening was extremely important. We didn't want to compromise the integrity of the volumetrics on the inside of the building. So this was essentially providing us with the location for the interior face of the north wall of the penthouse addition. Combined with that is the minimum DOB allowed head height clearance on a stair in the 1968 code, which is 6'8". So that was also reinforcing this location for where we would need to put the wall above and cut that floor in order to provide occupiable access to this new roof structure. Those things together were combined with two other variables. One is our ability to shrink the size of the roof structure at this location to a feasible level that could be coordinated. The other was also a DOB criteria building code for what the head height of occupiable space is, which is 7'6". So those two things together created a staircase that came all the way up to a landing that was even with the rear terrace and that steps back down 4 steps to the occupiable space of this penthouse condition. And that left us with the 7'6" height after pulling the roof structure down as much as we possibly could in order to accommodate it. What that's left us with is about 1'8" of visibility on the front side. And I can walk you through how that visibility has taken shape. What you see out here again is that guardrail with FDNY maintenance protective rail. And this is the line of the terrace in the rear. We are trying to keep as many of these existing rafters as possible because they were replaced as part of the 2010 renovation. So they are new metal C-joists that are pocketed into the brick on both sides. This is the proposed plan of what we are hoping to achieve. Again, you can see the stair that comes up, a continuous landing that goes across the space from east to west that allows for walking out to this terrace condition, a series of folded metal doors, and then stepping back down into the occupiable space, which really only ends up being about 11'2" in depth. Up front is the FDNY rail and access gate, and then there is a window on the front, which is really meant to provide maintenance access to the relocated fans and the existing HVAC unit. So to show you what this would look like in elevation, this is again the existing condition. And this is our proposed condition. So we are proposing that the front and side elevation of this would be clad in a staggered standing seam patinated zinc. And I think this speaks to other rooftop structures within the district that are either stair bulkheads or utilitarian mechanical shapes. I think we are also still talking about a relatively small amount of visibility. You would not even see this window. It would really just be this strip right under the flashing cap of the roof that would be visible from the street. The railing and FDNY access gate would all not be visible from the street. And naturally, you are seeing this in straight elevation. And so this top of the rear side of the penthouse addition is making this look taller than it actually will look from the street. Similarly, to look at the back condition, this is the existing. And then our proposed would match the white painted brick that is on the rest of the elevation on just this rear facade. We're also replicating the black painted metal handrail that was installed as part of the 2010 renovation on the porch. And we are employing the same door manufacturer for the black and steel folded door system that constructed the doors as part of the 2010 renovation. You will see just on the left a small wood screen that would screen the mechanical HVAC unit that's on this side. That HVAC unit is really just to provide tempered air for this new space. So to walk you through the mock-up that we have installed, I would point out that we constructed a mock-up, and then once the mock-up was constructed, we looked for ways to continue to reduce visibility. Among them was working with a structural engineer to slim down the front construction of the north wall only from a 2x6 to a heavy gauge 2x4 stud, and that bought us 2 more inches. So we reconstructed the front of the mock-up to move that back, which I think did even continue to help on visibility. So from Bleecker, you can see there is no visibility to the street. You can just see the existing conditions. When we move towards Hudson, you can see in this red outline, there is a small amount of visibility as the start of the addition begins to peek out around the corner where the building next to us steps back. Moving to the front elevation, there is that strip of that 1'8" that goes across the front of the elevation. And then as we continue to move down, that strip of visibility remains relatively constant. And then as we move down towards the police station, there is one more sliver of view before we get eclipsed by the taller building to the east of us and associated tree cover. There is no visibility from the corner on Hudson Street. If we go to that incidental view that I spoke of, you can see it's about 8 to 10 feet wide, an existing gap, historical gap between these 2 buildings. This outline in red shows the extended rear chimney and the extent of the addition that would be visible from the back elevation on the rear. To walk through the materiality of the whole composition, as you can see, most of the materials that would be here are already existing. So on the front elevation, the existing front brick, the black multi-light windows, the black painted wood trim, and the existing brownstone are all existing to remain. We are not proposing any alterations to the historic and designated facade. What we are adding on top is that staggered standing seam patinated zinc material along with the black and steel of that window that would provide access for maintenance. Similarly, on the rear elevation, the existing white painted rear brick would be replicated on the rear face of our addition, as well as the material and manufacturer of the existing doors would be replicated for the terrace doors at the top. The only location of this tropical hardwood would be the screening of that mechanical unit, and we would allow that to weather over time, so it should provide a gray tone that would complement the rest of the relatively neutral tones. Just to end, I thought I would walk around some other aspects of the district, which I think ground our project. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think there are numerous examples of a small, minimally visible addition onto similar massings of 3 to 5 story row houses around the district. Just to touch on some of them briefly, there's one, this is on 11th Street. We see a rooftop structure that provides similar amounts of visibility and to, I think, what we are ultimately proposing. A better example might be just next door on 11th Street. Even though this is a double wide row house and ours is a single wide, the composition and materiality is very similar. And I took something just from the designation or the certificate of appropriateness back in 2017 that said the modifications to an expansion of the rooftop addition will not eliminate any significant architectural features of the building. I think that's really what we are also trying to do. I don't think anything that we are proposing is compromising the integrity of the base row house condition on the front. And then the last example is actually 1 block up from us on Charles Street. And this addition was done, was a previous commission, but it shows a addition that is much more visible, I think, than ours. The reason I chose to include it was, number one, they also do happen to have an incidental view, except this incidental view is from West 10th Street of their primary elevation, which you can see on the left. And then on the right, lower, you can also see that they have also chosen a utilitarian representation for how this addition will separate itself from the more formal materiality of the building below. They chose what appears to be a patinated copper, whereas ours would be a smaller scale patinated zinc. But I think that this again speaks to what our goals are in trying to situate this within the district and accommodate the penthouse with minimal intrusion. And this is kind of just one block away. That was it. Thanks again for letting me share the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have with the proposal.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Chapin, please go ahead. Commissioner Chapin, are you muted? I sent you a, request to unmute. Oh, you seem to. I think you're unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry if I missed this, but what is the height of the addition from the roof, and also what is it? How far is it set back? Or the railing, I guess, is right at the edge. Can you just speak to those items?
Sure. The railing is set back the FDNY required minimum, which is 6 feet from not the edge of the cornice, but the edge of the face of the building. And so that's how we ended up with that location. So you can see here, we actually moved it back slightly longer just so it could serve as both the maintenance rail and the guardrail for this condition right here, while still keeping it out of view. The entire addition is about just under 12 feet set back from the face of the building. As it relates to, you were asking about the height of the elevation in relation to the roof. You can see here that the existing cornice height is 36 feet above the sidewalk, and the top of the penthouse in the rear is 14 feet above that. But I think on the front, we would be coming up something more like 9 feet. Sorry. On the front side. So I don't have that specific dimension, but it's essentially close to 9 feet on the front side. It's accommodating the structure and then the structure of the roof.
Thank you.
And just a follow-up question to that, because I think, you showed really very clearly why you were sort of limited to this footprint, and that you have these minimum floor to ceiling heights in order to kind of meet the landing points that you would create at the roof, given this very steeply pitched existing roof. We've seen some applications where the addition has sort of been dropped down into the floor below to help kind of get it out of the sight line. And I don't know whether you considered that, or whether there just isn't enough room in the floor below to accommodate it.
Exactly. I think we run into the problem of the head height issue. When you turn up this landing and begin to go, it really set that height in terms of coming back up, and also the continuation of the roof plane was something that both us and the client really wanted to try to maintain. So we squished down that structure, doing pretty much everything we could to sink the upper roof down into the addition as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? All right, I think we don't have other questions right now, so why don't we move to public testimony? And if you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand, and we will begin, as always, with anyone who signed up in advance. And I'll turn it over to Lisa Krasavich to walk us through the testimony.
Okay, thank you. And Oh, nobody signed up to speak, but I do see one hand raised. Okay, Sarah Bean Atman, I brought you in. And you just need to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose.
There we go. Our committee reviewed this application, and some felt that the visibility of the rooftop addition from both the West 10th Street side and Christopher Street was a bit too great. They agreed with Community Board 2 that further effort should be made to reduce that visibility through modifications to the roof design and/or adjusting the roof angle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, did we receive any written testimony?
We did receive that resolution from Manhattan Community Board 2 recommending approval, but to limit the visibility from the north.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Kane, would you like to respond to that or speak a little bit more about the conversation at the community board?
Certainly. I think we did bring up the conversation. The hesitation, I think, on our side is that, as I pointed out, the occupiable space in this addition is only 11'2". And so modification to the front side of the roof below 7'6" would be removing anything that came below that would be removing it as occupiable and usable space on the front side. And so given the small amount of space that we are working with in order to stick within this footprint, it seemed like to remove 10 to 15% of the usable area was something that, if possible, we would like to avoid.
Okay. I see we have another question. Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead and just accept my request to unmute.
How much am I seeing? Am I seeing 3 feet of a linear, about 3 feet of a cornice of the building running straight across? Is that what I'm seeing from the sidewalk across the street?
Much less, actually. It's only 20 inches, so it's 1'8". You see a band across on the top that is 1'8" across the proposed addition.
And I don't see the edge of the edge of the fence, so you don't fall over like the parapet.
Correct. Correct. The rail is not.
I don't see that at all. The railing I don't see. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Right. And I think you said you don't see the top of the window either.
Exactly.
Okay. And Commissioner Holford Smith?
Yeah, I had a question about the placement of the stair. I think from how you described it, it was a desire to not impinge on the existing sort of opening for the existing stair, but you could in fact push the stair further. You could impinge on that opening slightly to push the addition so it was not visible from the street.
Yes, I think that
push it back, basically.
You mean towards the rear of the
towards
building?
The rear of the building, yeah.
Yeah, I think we would only be limited then by making sure we have the same degree of head clearance for the stair that is coming up underneath it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, not seeing any other questions. I think we will move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. So I am now sending a request to unmute you all, so please accept that. And Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Chapin, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin the discussion. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you like to begin this one?
Sure. You know, I think just given the scale of these, well, in this house, but 2 in a row, that, you know, just having this little bit of visibility is distracting. So I think that the applicant should try to do what they can to minimize that view. I think the, an addition could be approvable, but I think I'd like to see less of it from over the main facade.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Goldblum?
I was just scrolling to see something. Yeah, this is something of a self-imposed problem. I think they have been very scrupulous in trying to make their box as small as it could be. But in the end, if the terrace at the back, if you go to page 23 of 49, I guess it is, page 22 in their presentation. If you made the terrace in the back terrace, instead of 7'11" made that 5 feet, and maybe you had your front terrace to be where you put your table, you could slide the whole, and this isn't about the stair. The stair need not be visible, right? If the stair had a sloping roof that followed the line of the diagram that they showed a few pages up, the stair bulkhead itself would not be visible. Visibility is in the room that is created next to the stair. And yes, they've tried their best to hide it, but it seems like with some minor adjustments, this thing could be not visible, and therefore they should make those gestures and make it not visible.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin, I skipped you, so why don't you go ahead?
I think I agree with the previous comments. We really, I think the proposal is fine in general, but the visibility over the front facade is really not something we would normally approve. So they really need to work to, diminish that. That's it.
And thank you, Commissioner Devonshire.
I think it needs to be less visible when they've been given two ideas for doing that, and should follow through with that.
Great. Commissioner Chen?
I agree with the comments.
Okay. Commissioner Bland?
Agree. Less visible.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree that they need to work on the visibility.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with my fellow commissioners.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson?
Agreed.
Commissioner Shamir Baran?
I agree, less visibility.
Great, thank you. All right, I think everybody agrees that there could be a couple of things that one could do to reduce the visibility primarily over the front facade. So Commissioner Holford-Smith, would you make that motion?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 21-01582, 224 West 10th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, a Greek Revival style row house built in 1847-48. Application is to construct a rooftop addition. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the rooftop addition will be minimally visible from the west and from a gap in the street wall over the rear facade and at a distance from oblique angles in the context of other rooftop accretions and secondary facades. That the simple massing, design, and materials of the metal-clad rooftop addition will be in keeping with typical rooftop bulkheads found throughout the district. That the rooftop addition will be set back on the front and rear facades, thereby maintaining a sense of the building's original massing. That the extended chimneys visible over the rear elevation through a narrow view corridor from Christopher Street will be extended only to the minimum height to meet safety regulations and feature materials and finishes that are typical of chimneys found throughout the district. That the proposed work will not diminish the special architectural and historic character of the building or of the Greenwich Village Historic District. However, I found that the addition and railing will be unnecessarily visible over the primary facade when viewed from directly across the street. Therefore, I recommend that the addition be restudied to eliminate visibility from across the street and directly over the primary facade.
Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Thank you.
Chair Carroll.
Yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Letby, Commissioner Letby.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
That's approved with modifications. Please continue to work with the staff and we'll move to the next item.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is number 4, LPC 20-05605, an application for a certificate of appropriateness number of Manhattan Block 1030, Lot 46, 222 Central Park South, the Gainsborough Studios individual landmark. This is an artist cooperative housing building designed by Charles W. Buckham and built in 1907 to 08. The application is to replace windows.
Commissioners, the applicants and staff have joined the hearing. Please note that staff will be walking you through this proposal and the applicants are available for questions. Staff, you may begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Elizabeth Diker, Preservation Staff. The individually landmarked 222 Central Park South features a variety of window types at the primary facade, including these large steel casement windows assemblies that we see 2 at each floor. Many of these have been replaced or altered over time, as we can see in these elevations, noting the historic window configurations on the left and the existing window configurations on the right. Some of the historic steel casement windows do still exist at the upper floors, the details of which have been studied as part of this proposal. The applicant team for 222 Central Park South is seeking approval for the installation of 1 new steel window assembly at the 4th floor that will match the original and historic steel windows in terms of material, configuration, and finish, with a slight adjustment in operation. Here we can see a historic photo of the building from circa 1910. Here in this historic photograph, we can see the area of work circled. In this photograph, we can see that the 2 outermost sleeves of the steel casement windows have a double hung operation. Here's that image zoomed in further. Here we can see the existing conditions of the primary facade and the steel casement window to be replaced. Here we can see the interior of the 4th floor casement window and a detailed view of the exterior sill and window framing. More detailed photographs of the window framing. Now we're going to get into the details of the existing and proposed windows. The proposed replacement windows features a 3% loss of glazing from the historic. Now we have the existing and proposed steel casement window elevations. While the historic windows feature double hung outer leaves at the ends, the applicants are proposing to change the operation of these units to outswing casement. To mimic the meeting rail of the double hung window units, the applicants have added a horizontal muntin. In these final slides, we can see comparative existing and proposed sections and details. And the applicants are here to answer any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any questions for the applicant? All right, not seeing any questions. Why don't we move to public testimony and then see if we have questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you, and I'll turn it over to Lisa. Lisa?
Okay, great. We had one person sign up, John Graham. And John, I've brought you in. And you just need to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. Could you? Oh, there you go. I see your camera. There you go. And please just state your name for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham speaking for the Victorian Society of New York. This building is its windows. We therefore suggest that the Commission should be very skeptical of this proposal to remove the original windows in this apartment. If they are truly beyond repair, then they should be replaced with new windows that match the originals exactly in appearance. The sight lines are critical, and the operable sash should be indistinguishable in that regard from the fixed sash. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 5 recommending approval, but also suggests that the applicants develop a window replacement master plan.
Thank you. All right, so now I'd like to turn to the applicant and see if they would like to respond to the comments, address the issue raised about replicating the meeting rail.
Yes. Hi there. Thank you all. I appreciate the comments made, and especially the first comment that had to do with replicating the window exactly, which, as many of us know, with current manufacturing standards, is not possible. That it's a very unique window. Only one of them in the building is existing that remains. All of them have been modified and have reached, even that one has been pieced together in repairs that, so the existing windows in the apartment we're talking about are not original. And the one window that I found to copy had also been modified just with repairs. So we were not technically able to match the existing details. It's a very unique, slim double hung window that literally doesn't exist in current manufacturing. And in terms of the suggestion to create a master plan, the building has agreed to develop it further, and this solution will be used as anywhere else in the building where they change these windows.
Okay. All right, other questions? Okay, not seeing any final questions. I'm going to move to unmute everyone again so that we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. So Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so as the applicant and staff represented this building, it has a variety of windows that have been replaced and or altered over time. And this is an application for one window, but certainly an approval today could serve as a model for future windows. And the applicant is proposing to replicate the configuration, but with a change in operation. So why don't we go ahead and start this discussion? Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you like to start this one?
Yes. I think this is acceptable because it is almost like the existing, enough almost that from the ground floor we really wouldn't perceive it. And just to clarify though, Commissioner, the additional muntin is actually in the base of that one narrow element.
Well, there is a muntin where the meeting rail would be, and I think Corey, do you want to? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or see if you want to go to the section detail. Move us to the section.
Yeah, if we can go to the section, that's better. But essentially, right, those two outer panels are currently these very narrow double hung sashes within the larger assembly that's otherwise fixed sashes. And because they're unable to find a way to replicate that double hung operation, the applicant's proposing to do it as a full height operable casement, but to add that mullion at the same alignment of where the double hung sashes and meeting rails were, so that its appearance will be somewhat similar, particularly when seen down from the street level, although it won't have that change in plane that the double hung windows did.
Yeah, I can accept this change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith?
Yes, I agree. I think going to a what appears to be thermally broken double pane window is definitely an improvement. Technically, I would just really advocate for the building to create a master plan going forward so that every other unit has the same windows and so that the profiles all match. But I think they've done a good job of trying to align the profiles as best they can, so I can find it approvable.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I agree with, I think that I can support this application as presented. I note that I was going to forgot to ask about this, but they did establish a master plan for the rear facade earlier, and I was just curious as to what that was. You know, if the staff could just explain that. But I think that this seems like a reasonable approach.
Okay, thank you. So I think the rear facade is not visible and may have been a different window configuration altogether. And the staff can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I do believe that independent of this application, the building board is considering a master plan, and we may see that in the future.
It seems that since they did it in the back, they will probably follow through, which is good.
Exactly. So I think they're working on the front. Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree.
Okay, Commissioner Devonshire?
I can approve it.
Commissioner Chen?
Same here.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes, this is appropriate.
Commissioner Lutfi?
And I also would encourage the building to do a master plan. And this is a good case study, so.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Jefferson?
I can approve it.
Okay, and so sorry, Commissioner Gustafson, that you were the last, but you can bring it home now.
It's appropriate.
Thank you.
Wow.
All right, so Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you go ahead and make this motion?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 2005605, 222 Central Park South, Gainsborough Studios, an individual landmark, an artist cooperative housing building designed by Charles W. Buckham and built in 1907-8. The application is to replace windows. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the building, and I recommend approval, finding that the proposed steel casement windows will match the original steel windows in terms of material configuration and finish, that the proposed windows will feature a level of articulation compatible with the style of the building and closely recall the historic profiles and details, that the discrete change in window operation in the outer leaves from double hung to casement will be harmonious with the design of the window assemblies and will not be perceptible when viewed from the street, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the landmark.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holford-Smith, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baran,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford-Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor and unopposed. The motion carries.
Okay, so that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
All right, the next item before we break for the lunch break is item number 5. This is LPC 19-4844, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 896, Lot 30, 238 East 15th Street in the Stuyvesant Square Historic District. This is an Italianate style house built in 1850, and the application is to construct a rooftop addition and excavate the cellar.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Just giving control of the slides to them. And we're just getting a little bit of technical difficulty. Just give me a moment. Okay, the applicants are now available to take control of the presentation. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
My name is Keitaro Ne. I'm with Architects H2N. Let's see. Okay, so the project is 238 East 15th Street. I'm just trying to figure out how to control the next slide.
So you can just take your mouse and click it on the screen and advance using the mouse
okay.
or the arrow keys.
Okay. Okay. So on the left is a 1940 tax photo, and on the right is the building as it exists today. Okay. This is a block diagram, and this is our building. Currently, there are really 4 remaining townhouses on this block, and the rest of the buildings are post-war in nature. This is the sort of aerial view of our building, and lucky or not, we are situated in front of the Stuyvesant Square Park. So we have more visibility than sort of your average condition. This is a elevation of the block, and this is our building here. And you can see there's like a post-war church and some other post-war apartment buildings on this block. It's another view of the existing building. This is the rear facade. It's painted brick. This is a plot plan, and we're going to be proposing, one of the things we're proposing is a 1-story roof addition. This is the sort of existing and proposed elevation. So we are working closely with LPC staff to fully restore the front street facade. And in addition to that, this is the 1-story roof addition. Basically, it's 2 rectangular masses clad in zinc. This is the rear facade. And in addition, on the rear, we're proposing to excavate partially about 6 feet down the rear yard, a portion of the rear yard, to meet with the cellar space inside. This is a view of the rear facade, sort of existing and proposed. This is a side elevation. And yes, this is the excavation we're proposing here, the 1-story addition. We do have a screen for the HVAC system here. This is a demolition section, and so we are removing the original elevator bulkhead that currently exists. We're removing some old HVAC equipment. In the cellar, we're proposing to excavate the entire cellar down 1 foot, and then we will have a narrow lap pool that'll be excavated another 4 feet. And this is the rear yard excavation here. This is a section through the proposed project. So we're doing a full interior renovation. This is the swimming pool here. We're also proposing an elevator pit approximately 4 to 5 feet deep as well. And this will be the new proposed elevator shaft. This is the cellar plan, and this is the lap pool that we're proposing. It's approximately 40 feet by 8 feet. And this is the elevator pit that we will be proposing here where the elevator is. And next slide. Oops. And this is the rear yard. There are double height sliding doors that connect the cellar inside to the exterior. And this is the area that we propose to excavate. And the excavation is only about 6 feet down. So it's not like a full story. This is the roof plan, existing sort of demolition plan for the roof. And this is our proposed roof addition. So the addition itself is this shape here. This is the elevator bulkhead, and here is just a skylight to the stairwell below. This is a rendered aerial view of the roof addition. This is from the front, and this is from the back. This is a sort of a section showing the sort of visibility angles. From across the street, our addition is not viewable. However, because of the Stuyvesant Square Park, we will be able to see the roof addition at certain vantage points, and we can go into that a little bit more with our mock-up. And this is the actual mock-up, shown from various angles. This is a sort of visibility diagram. This is our building here. And for this diagram, we're going to assume that we're sort of taking a hypothetical condition that there are no trees in the park. And if there were no trees, this is what we feel would be visible. So this is the corner of 17th and Rutherford. This is probably 400 feet away. If the leaves were not here, if the trees were not here, it would be a small speck of visibility there. And this is now 17th Street in the middle of the park, which would be the west side of Stuyvesant Park, west side of 2nd Avenue. And we digitally enhanced some of these photos so that the commission can more easily see the profile of the mock-up. So there's a sort of yellow zone, which would be the first floor addition, and then in orange would be the elevator bulkhead. This is a sort of a view of 17th closer to 2nd Avenue. If the trees weren't here, we feel it might be visible. This is another view around that same area. And here we can see it through the clearing. This is now standing on 2nd Avenue near 17th Street. And at this point, some of the leaves did start to fall, so we were able to see the mock-up. This is in the sort of the middle of the park, on the west side of 2nd Avenue. This is again 2nd Avenue view. This is getting closer to the building, but still pretty much in the center of the west portion of Stuyvesant Park. And this is slightly east of the building in the park. And some areas we can only see a little bit of the elevator bulkhead. This is again 2nd Avenue, now inching closer towards 15th Street. And this is now we're standing on the east side, past the east portion of Stuyvesant Park. I think this is Perlman and 15th, and it's somewhat visible there. This is now walking closer to 2nd Avenue, and the elevator bulkhead is a little bit visible. Now, if we stand in front of the building, the addition is not visible at all. This is a little bit into the park, and again, it's not visible there. This is a little bit north, between 15th and 16th on Rutherford, and the elevator bulkhead is visible in that location. And now we're on the east portion of Stuyvesant Park, and there are moments where it may be visible. And same thing here. And again here as well. And this is the rear facade, backyard. The rear facade is not visible from any public thoroughfare, but we just wanted to show you what the mock-up looked like from the rear. I'm gonna now hand it over to my partner, David Hu, and he may have some final comments. David?
Please unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay, the applicant is, I believe, trying to unmute himself.
Huh.
I believe he's unmuted now.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Yes, this is David Hu. I'm a Qatar's partner for Architects H2N. I actually just have some very brief clarification. I think actually Qatar already mentioned it. The interesting thing about the park is that even when we want to do a proper presentation, we actually have to go to the park a few times because of the leaves, especially like when in the summer. We actually went there many times, and it was actually very difficult to be able to take a proper photograph that actually we can really see our building. So actually what you have seen, our latest photograph when the leaves already start falling. So that's why we're able to obtain these photographs with a view of our addition. But then still, it is still not very good visibility. So that's why in the end, we have to digitally add those colors to enhance the color of the addition. So those photos are actually with the enhanced color, not really just with the net. So we just want to clarify that so you can actually have a sense of what this whole addition look like.
Okay, and I know the addition is zinc clad, has a zinc cladding, and does that go on the sides as well, or is it just on the front?
On the side, yeah. The front actually is glass, so we can actually overlook the park. The sides actually, actually this is another point. The building is actually facing north, so therefore the whole facade is actually always in the shadow. So usually when we actually have some sunlight, is actually on the east side, west side. West side actually there's no view of it. We cannot see it. The east side, the reason why we also use zinc is that it's non-reflective and is also a very muted kind of gray color. So that's where we try to keep a very low profile for the addition.
I'd like to add one more thing. We went through several iterations of the roof addition. Our original design was sort of a different profile with a sort of sawtooth configuration. And we actually had a mock-up done for that. And after seeing it and then working very closely with the LPC staff, we decided to go with a different direction where we just simplified the profile to just rectangles in a zinc color, and really just try to make the addition more stealthy and almost try to make it invisible rather than trying to highlight it in any way. So that was the other thing we.
All right, and sort of then just picking up on your idea of the sawtooth, then did you consider sloping the front of this addition back?
In the sawtooth design, there was a slope in the front and back, but the problem was that the peaks got too high, and so we thought it would be better to just simplify the form and bring it down as low as we can, and that we felt that that will blend in more with a sort of urban context, of New York.
Okay, and what's the material on the elevator bulkhead?
It's also zinc.
It's also zinc, okay. Other questions? Oh, Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, so the elevator goes to the new roof penthouse, right?
Yes.
It will, yes. It will go to the addition, the roof addition, but it won't go to the roof of the roof addition.
And this is a single family house, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And what is the interior height of the rooftop addition?
The interior height will vary. It's stepped a little bit, but it's somewhere between 9'4", 10'4".
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I think we'll move to testimony. We may have other questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And I will turn it over to Lisa Krasavich to take us through the testimony.
Okay, great. We had 2 people sign up. I'm going to start with Kelly Carroll, to be followed by John Graham. And Kelly, I've brought you in.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. This row house is a part of a small patch of surviving 1850s Italianates on East 15th Street. The proposed rooftop addition is in clear view from Stuyvesant Park, which alters the intact nature of some of the oldest homes of the district. While areas outside of the district are varied, visible rooftop additions are not characteristic of the Stuyvesant Square Historic District. While not before the commission, HDC applauds the proposed facade work. The restoration of the segmental window openings is a tremendous undertaking toward the original Italianate appearance. We wondered if the restoration includes extending the cornice brackets back down to their original length with drips into the masonry, a small detail that would further attenuate the facade's proportions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And next, John Graham, brought you in.
John, you're muted.
Yourself.
How's that?
That's great.
Commissioners, there are many benefits to living in a row house in a historic district on one of New York City's rare green squares. Plenty of light and air, an open view guaranteed in perpetuity, relative quiet, no fear of an ugly new building going up across the street. But with these advantages comes a disadvantage. Any rooftop addition is bound to be visible, and widely so. In determining whether a particular addition is appropriate, both the extent of visibility and the context of visibility should be considered. This row of buildings is seen across the square against an open sky, a vanishingly rare condition in the city. This context makes the visibility of the proposed addition more problematic than when the condition is the more common jumbled view. Is there any rooftop intrusion that would be minimal enough in this situation to be appropriate? We are not sure, but it would have to be much smaller than what is proposed. The proposed facade renovation is for the most part excellent, an appropriate restoration of the original windows and masonry surrounds. We note, however, that the existing cornice is missing some details along the bottom, including horizontal moldings and drops below each bracket. These should be restored. Restoration of missing features of the door surround would also be nice. Finally, Commissioners, just when I was looking at the section that was proposed, I noted that there didn't seem to be a railing on the front facade of the roof, which I believe would have to be set by the Department of Buildings. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
Thank you. And Rich, do we have any additional written testimony?
We do have a letter from Manhattan Community Board 6, and they have no objections to the application.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'd like to turn back to the applicants and see if you would like to address or respond to any of the comments that you've heard.
Let's see, as far as I think there was a question about the railing. There is an existing railing there now. It's like a wrought iron fencing of some type. It's set back from the facade, so I don't know if it's going to be visible from across the street. I think in some of the photos, you may be able to see it from a further distance. So there is fencing there now. You know, we may choose to replace it with a different kind of railing at some point, but for now, there is something there from a safety point of view.
All right, anything else you want to add with respect to the visibility or context?
I guess I just wanted to stress that though it is visible from various points around Stuyvesant Square Park, probably for most of the year, the trees will hide not only the roof addition, but in many cases will just basically you can't even see our building at all. But you know, we wanted to be very clear as to what is theoretically possible in terms of visibility. And many of those shots that we showed you were, you know, over 200 feet, 400, 500 feet distance. So in reality, as one walks through the space, through the park, especially with a very mute color palette and very simple form, we don't think people will really notice it. You know, that's our feeling.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, as the views where you are closer to the building and really connect it with the building visually, you really are seeing the bulkhead, the elevator bulkhead, more than the addition. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Any final questions, commissioners? Okay, I'm going to move to unmute you or request to unmute you so that we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
A motion to close the hearing.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, so another rooftop.
You need to vote.
All in favor, all in favor,
Aye.
say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is now closed and we'll begin. Another rooftop addition with two components, occupiable space and then an elevator bulkhead that is taller and seen in more of the close-up views. So Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
I think it's, first of all, I want to thank the applicant for not only a good presentation, but for your complete transparency in trying to make us aware of what the visibility not within our what we're reviewing today, but the work on the building, both on the front and the rear, is wonderful. It's a great addition to the neighborhood. So, but I do.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Nor can I. Commissioner Luffy, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
Okay.
Yes. Can you come closer?
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so, but the truth of the matter is it's pretty visible. And I think that you need to look for a way to reduce it. And I think Michael had actually referred to this, but if in looking at the measurements of the, floor to floor heights, I think there's some room here to drop this a little bit and eliminate the visibility.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes, this is one of those projects that context affects visibility, you may say. I think if elevator penthouse was cut back quite a bit, it would relieve some of their problems. But I think the visibility is too much for this particular context.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I agree. Context does matter, and if your buildings, you get a big plus being in this location, but the negative is the visibility, and they do need to make it less visible, both the bulkhead and the addition, the rooftop addition.
Okay, Commissioner Shamir Baran?
I have a long relationship with this particular building, not one that would lead to my recusal, but as a child, I took flamenco guitar lessons in the basement floor, and the building was filled with separate apartments. This was the 1970s, of course. So I remember how shabby, how different it was. I think there is too much visibility, and so I would request that they reduce that.
Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree with comments. It's far too visible. Also, I think that we need to see what the railing is at the main roof, because that will be required, and I think that should be part of the next application.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Others' comments about, unfortunately, there is, too much visibility, even probably with the trees. And so it would be good if they could reduce the visibility of both the bulkhead and the rooftop addition. I'm not sure how much they can do that, but I feel like we shouldn't be denying them the right to do anything, because it is obviously anything that's going to be up there is going to be visible, and it's fairly modest in general. So I think I could approve it with the provision that they'll do whatever they can to reduce both of those things, working with the staff.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I'm waiting for the flamenco concert. In the meantime, I would agree with my other commissioners about the reductions. I think the interior should be 8 foot at the front and no higher, which would allow for a reduction of probably around 2 feet, 2.5 feet. It's a significant amount. If you look at the visibility, much of the visibility of the main portion of the addition was a fairly narrow band at the top, and it looks to me like you could probably eliminate much, if not all of that. And by having the elevator's top stop be at the top floor of the existing building and not going up to the penthouse, that would allow them to drop the top of the elevator shaft to equal or be below the height of the reduced penthouse height. I think the restoration is great. I think the rear yard excavation and cellar excavations are fine. I think I agree with Anne about the railing. It has to be shown, it has to be specified, and it should not be visible. And I just think that the criteria should be very clear for the applicant that if it's visible, if anything is visible from across the street or in connection with the building, as we've discussed it, that should be reduced so that it is not visible. And the only visibility that would be okay is that from a distance, or that which is disconnected from the main body of the building, and that should be reduced as much as possible.
Thank you. Commissioner Devonshire.
I agree with all of Michael's comments, and I think we need to be cautious about modifications to the interior because it could be eligible for National Register listing under Category C, association with a notable personage, i.e. Adi Shamir Barron's flamenco lessons. So we should do that further, but I agree with Michael. There has to be some diminution of the rooftop material.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Chen
I agree with the fellow commissioners' comments.
and Commissioner Bland.
Not much more to say. I agree, though. It should be less visible.
Okay. All right. So I think everybody agrees that we need to restudy this application. I think most commissioners are comfortable with an addition here that one does see from great distances, but not any addition that is visible really close up or where you visually associate it with the building. And so, or at least, directly from across the street. So I think that you should continue to study this. You can explore reducing the floor-to-floor heights. It seems like there's a lot of room to reduce by doing that, as well as thinking about, the perhaps canting it even at that height, and then and also consider eliminating the stop to the elevator at the rooftop addition and stopping at a floor below in the main building to eliminate that visibility, which I think will really help most of those close-up views. So where I think now the bulkhead is the only thing that is visible. So we'll take no action today, and we'll ask you to make those changes and come back to us with a revised proposal. We'll allow you to think about how to reduce it yourself, and we'll see you back as soon as you're ready. Okay. So that is our last item before lunch. So we are going to now break for 30 minutes and we'll come back at 1:15. So commissioners, you just need to turn your camera and audio off. And members of the public who are in the meeting, please leave the meeting so that we can lock it, and we'll let you back in when we get back at 1:15. So thank you all.